Good evening, Sea Turtles. We are continuing to read The Wind in the Willows. Tonight is Chapter 5, Dulce Donum, which means Home Sweet Home. One day, Rat and Mole were returning home after a long day out with Otter when their path took them through a village. Mole was a bit anxious, but Rat reassured him. Never mind, they're all safe indoors by this time, sitting around the fire. Men, women, and children, dogs and cats and all, and they slipped past unnoticed. Once beyond the village, Rat was leading the way, so he did not notice when Mole stopped in his tracks and sniffed the air. It was one of those mysterious fairy calls that suddenly reached him and made him tingle all over. He sniffed again, and memories came flooding back. It was home. Mole had scarcely given a thought to his old home since he'd left it. Now he was filled with old memories. "Ratty," he called, "come on, come back quickly." "Oh, come along, Mole," replied Rat cheerfully, still plodding on. "Please stop, Ratty," pleaded poor Mole. Mole caught up with Rat, but he was obviously so upset that Rat sat him down on a tree trunk. "What is it, old fellow?" he asked. Poor Mole was sobbing so hard he could barely speak. Oh dear, he choked. "We might have just gone back and had one look at it, Ratty. I was smelling it, but you wouldn't turn back." Man, Mole looks awfully upset. Rat took Mole by the paw and set off back the way they had come. "It's no good," cried Mole. "It's too late. It's too dark and think of the river bank and your supper." "Hang the river bank and supper too," said Rat heartily. "I'm going to find your place now, if I stay out all night. So cheer up, old chap. We'll soon be back there again." They didn't have to go far. Mole suddenly dived down a tunnel to which his faithful nose had led him, and Rat followed. It seemed a long way down until at last Mole struck a match and lit a lantern that had been hanging on the wall. And there it was, the little front door of his house. Mole's face beamed at the sight of all these things so dear to him, and he hurried Rat through the door. Looks like he has a nice place. It was cold and damp and musty and cheerless in the long neglected house, but Rat quickly busied himself. "The first thing we want is a jolly good fire," he said. And Mole, encouraged by Rat's cheerfulness, started dusting and polishing. Even so, he had another fit of the blues. "How about your supper, Ratty?" he moaned. "I've nothing to give you." "Pull yourself together, Mole, and come with me and forage," said Rat. They went and they looked in all the cupboards. The result was not so very depressing after all. A tin of sardines, a box of biscuits, a German sausage, and some bottles of juice. They had just got busy with their sardine tin opener when sounds were heard from outside. Sounds like the scuffling of small feet in the gravel and tiny voices. "I think it must be the field mice," said Mole proudly. "They go round carol singing at this time of year. They come to Mole End last of all, and I used to give them hot drinks and supper too, sometimes." "Let's have a look then," cried Rat, jumping up and running to the door. It was a pretty sight. As the door opened, one of the older field mice, carrying a lantern, said, "Now then, 1, 2, 3." And their shrill little voices rose on the air, singing an old-time carol. "Well sung, boys," cried Rat, and then, when they had finished, "Come on in, all of you." "Oh, Ratty," cried Mole in despair, "what are we doing? We have nothing left to offer them." "Leave all that to me," said Rat. "Here, you come with the lantern." He called to one of the field mice. "Come over this way. I want to talk to you." Rat gave him a basket and some money and sent him off to the shops with strict instructions as to what he should buy. The rest of the field mice perched in a row on the settee. Rat, meanwhile, was opening the bottles of juice that they had found to make cider. And soon every field mouse was sipping a hot drink and forgetting he had ever been cold in his life. "They do plays, too," Mole explained to Rat. "Hey, you!" cried Mole to one of them. "Get up and recite part of your play. You were in it the last time." The field mouse got up, giggled shyly, looked around the room, and remained absolutely tongue-tied. Then the field mouse who had gone to the shops came back. There was no more talk of recitations once the contents of the basket had been emptied on the table, and they all ate a lovely supper. They clattered off at last with pockets stuffed full of goodies for small brothers and sisters at home. When the door had closed on the last of them, Mole and Rat went back to the fireside. They brewed themselves a last bit of cider. Finally, Rat gave a tremendous yawn and said, "Mole, old chap, I am ready to drop." "Is that your bunk? Very well, I'll take this one," said Rat. "What a splendid little house this is." He clambered into his bunk and went to sleep at once. Mole was also glad to get to bed, and he lay down with great joy and contentment. After all the excitements of his new life, it was good to think that he had his own home to come back to. And that is the end of Chapter 5, where they find Mole's house again. Tomorrow we'll read Chapter 6, entitled Mr. Toad. Good night, San Pablo.